So welcome back to the Installer Plaza. You know, when Installer first launched 10 years ago, back in 2015, the heating industry looked a lot different. Now, 10 years on, there have been some major shifts in technology and policy, day-to-day reality for heating engineers. So to dig into all of that, the wins, the setbacks, and what comes next, well, I'm going to hand over to someone who's been the heart of the conversation. Nathan Van Gambling really doesn't need much introduction, but he's host, as you all know, the popular BetaTALK podcast. Now, in this live session, Nathan and his panel are going to explore where the industry stands right now in 2025, what's working, what's not, where investment's needed, and most importantly, what installers and customers really want. So I'm going to slip away, and Nathan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you later at the Merit Awards, won't I?
Yep, see you then.
So welcome to the annual live audience BetaTALK podcast. And as David said, we're the installer's 10 years old. So we're going to do the past, present and future of our industry. I'd just like to thank this season's sponsors, which are Intergas, and you'll find Intergas in Hall 5, E14, and they're right by the front door. And go and see their cylinder, which is sort of my favourite sort of cylinder for heat pumps at the moment. So we're going to talk about the past. So I brought my friend John Hancock, who's a school year older than me, so he's been in the industry a little bit longer than me. And he's the COO of our national's largest merchant that we all know, Wolseley. Mark Denman has also been involved with heat pumps a long time. He's one of my founding members of the Guild of Master Heat Engineers, and you've never heard of that before because I've just announced it for the first time ever. And his partner over there is Liam. These are fantastic engineers that we got in this country, and that guild is all about peer assessment. So you've heard me talk about peer-to-peer learning, but the original guilds in the Middle Ages started with something called peer assessment, and that's where the word masterpiece came from, because they had to produce a masterpiece for a journeyman to become a master. So that's something we might talk about as the future. We've got Madeleine, who's just done something very present, because I think today was your embargo press release that I did about 1 o'clock this morning. I was probably the only one up doing it. And we'll talk about what Nesta are doing at present. If you know me well, you'll know that I work quite closely with Nesta. There's a lot of think tanks involved in our industry. They're my favourite, which probably means the government's favourite as well. And then we've got Amrit. Now, Amrit is going to be talking about the future as well, because he's all into this thing called AI. Most of us don't know what AI is. We've heard of it. I'm on a stand with Amrit, and we're in Hall 4, which is upstairs, isn't it? And it's F42. So go and see what we're doing. You can scan these QR codes, and you can literally then speak into your phones. You can say things, oh, I've gone and visited this stand, and I found this, and I like this, I didn't like that. Because one of the reasons I started this podcast was to amplify the voice of engineers, give them a voice, because we haven't got time to fill out consultation papers. Think tanks have, and all the other charities and third sector, they call it, have. We don't. So this is a way where you can just speak into it, and the AI will then put that into a report with some very, very good, insightful information. So without further ado, I'm going to come to John. John, you've seen a lot of changes in the last 10 years, obviously with what you guys sell, what you see at the show. Tell us about some of these changes, and then obviously lead up to the fact you've got your renewable centre that's just opened, which leads us into the present, doesn't it?
Well, firstly, thanks, Nathan. You are my favourite podcast, you know that. So at Wolseley and at Plum Centre, we believe we are right at the heart of the home heating industry. We sell an awful lot of gas boilers, but like a lot of people, you will have noticed the sales of gas boilers is slowly going down, particularly over the last 3 or 4 years, and we're definitely seeing an increase in demand for heat pumps. That's still relatively small, but it is increasing, and so is the awareness and the interest in the sector as well. So a lot more installers are asking about heat pumps and how they can get involved. And I think the role of the merchant is quite crucial in that. Whichever merchant you use, most installers use a merchant 2 or 3 times a week minimum to go and pick up supplies. There's a great part we can play in educating installers and helping installers to educate consumers, because I think that really is the key. So we're seeing huge interest. We've launched Renewables Centre, which is here today. We're offering MCS Design accredited service, because I believe the industry is at a tipping point here. We are moving away from the gas combi being the answer to everything. It sits on the wall and just does what it does. And we're moving towards a world where systems will need to be designed and will need to work really, really efficiently. And that's a huge challenge for the industry in terms of upskilling installers, but also enabling installers to go and talk to consumers. So I would say they're the big changes.
We definitely haven't seen as many boilers here this year, have we?
It's a few, but it's decreasing.
So you started with boilers, but you were commercial, you got your F-gas. Now, you've obviously seen changes. Sort of if we look at the last 10 years and we're moving forward, you've seen some changes, definitely, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing we've had originally was where anyone could do it. We had the 6-week course just to become a gas engineer, and then you could put any boiler on the wall. So you had that big influx into the market. You had obviously the service and repair, British Gas, Home Serve and the likes of them looking after people's homes for years on 3-star contracts. That was for a long time. So you've gone from where originally there wasn't National Grid and British Gas, it was a nationalisation, and then that split out. And then they either went down the commercial route or the domestic route. And what we're seeing now, I think, is where the power is coming back into the engineers. So where they can, especially with heat pumps, where you're able to actually design something and use your skill and ability to actually produce something for the client. And it's not just a burner in a box on the wall. You've actually got to do something technical and use the skills that you've been taught over the years. Now, the biggest problem that we face probably in the last 10 years is how we've de-skilled apprenticeships. So where we're now coming out of that era, we've got a massive workforce that's probably aged, well, I sound old now, but like 40 to 55, which were the older sort of apprenticeship route. The worry is now is when they retire and all that skill goes with it, where does the industry leave itself then? So it's brilliant that we're seeing a lot more heat pumps and everything going in, and we're seeing a lot more people coming into the industry, but the training, what's delivered to these guys and girls who are getting involved in it isn't anywhere where it needs to be. And the worry is that where we've got people like Wolseley and whatnot designing these systems, that's good to an extent, but we're also producing a dumbed down industry at the same time, where we need the engineers designing the systems going to the merchant to go, this is my system, this is what I need, this is the kit I require, let's have a price for it. But with everything, you've also got NEBI announced this week where they're able to go straight to consumer, and you're bypassing the engineer. Now, the most important tool in all of this is the engineer. They're the person who should be designing the system, who should be implementing the system and then looking after the system going forward. So we need to bring it back more to the small businesses who are in this country who can do the whole thing from start to finish. Design, install, commission, and then look after it going forward. Because then you're going to get more people in the industry because it's exciting. It's not just a subcontractor for boxed, putting something on the wall. It's got to go back to what it was 20 years ago.
Just because this is getting recorded, just for the listeners that will listen to this later, where are you guys based, Custom Renewables?
So we're based in Milton Keynes, Oxfordshire, Hertfordshire, and we'll cover essentially from Norfolk all the way over to Gloucester, North London, and all around there. And we do everything renewables.
So you just mentioned something there about like NEBI going straight to the cut. And this is another thing we're starting to see as we shift to the present. It's getting a very competitive market out there, as we know. And there's all sorts of things happening that good, bad, we don't know yet, maybe indifferent.
You've got to embrace change. Everyone has to embrace change. It's inevitable, it's going to happen, so you have to go with it and see what happens. But the biggest part of it is the installer that sits in there. AI can bolt onto it, brilliant. Nesta and the team who do this are absolutely fantastic because it's geared to help the installer. But if you have a client going and buying a bit of kit and then saying to the guy, right, install that, you're like, why am I installing it? What am I installing? Will it work? Will it work? And if you look at the MCS on its own, it's not the client that's accountable. It's the installer of that kit. Whoever's putting it in, they're the one accountable. So it should be everything driven through the installer or that installation team. The consumer should not be involved in the purchasing or the design of that kit. they can have a say in it because you're designing it with them, as you should be, so they understand why you're doing something at a certain level or whatnot. But it's really got to be design-led by the installer because they're the one accountable for it.
So talking about helping installers, that's a nice segue. That's one of the words the American podcasters use, isn't it?
I try
So-
my best for you, Nate.
So, Madeleine, you're helping installers with this new project. The report's out today, isn't it? This pilot project you did where you've been helping gas engines transition by helping them fund their own install. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, so we know that a lot of gas engineers, others who've been in the industry for a while, are starting to get more interested in heat pumps. And we can see that through the numbers taking up heat pump training. We can have another discussion about the quality of the training, but we do see that a lot of people are going through it. They're expressing interest. What we also find, though, that is lots of people are training, but not necessarily going on to install heat pumps straight away or maybe ever. And when we talked to engineers about that, they were telling us, well, if you don't install a heat pump quite soon after you've done your training, you're not really getting to try those skills out. I mean, you basically just forget it, don't you? And you lose confidence in what you learned. So we set up this pilot where we basically were giving heat pump engineers who've done training a heat pump to then install in their own home. And the thinking was, okay, you do the training straight away, you install it at home. That means you're using those skills, you're kind of trying them out in practice, you're strengthening and embedding them. But also, then perhaps you live with a heat pump, you realise what it's like as a technology, its pros and cons. You can talk to customers about it in a way that's much more authentic because you are a heat pump owner. You're kind of just, getting to know the ins and outs in a way that you wouldn't just by reading about it or even just talking to others. So we think it's a benefit in terms of moving people into the industry more quickly and getting them to just be able to offer a wider range of technologies to their customers. We tested it out with SNPF in Scotland, who worked with us really, really closely, recruited plumbers and engineers to take part in it. And we tested it where half of the people who went on the scheme just did training and half installed a heat pump at home. And we just got really good feedback from the ones who did it at home. Everyone benefited, but those people who installed their own heat pump benefited more. So we feel really confident that it's a good idea. And so today we're launching the report about the programme, so you can read in more detail what happened. But even more excitingly, an offer for heating engineers to get involved. And we already have 4 partners who are launching their own versions of a scheme. And Renewables Centre is coming soon, is going to offer their scheme. So there will be 5 online. So basically there's loads for installers to choose from. If you'd like to train and then install a heat pump at home, go to the Start at Home website and you can see what schemes are available, how you can sign up, and just how you can get involved.
Yeah, so just to reiterate that, an engineer that's looking to transition can have a free heat pump installed in there. They get to do it, don't they? Do they have their hand held with help?
Yeah, the common feature in all the schemes is that it will give kit to heat pump installers for free. They don't have to outlay for it. That they get it delivered to their home. And in addition, schemes are offering other types of support. So a bit of hand holding, support with design. Different schemes have got a different offer in terms of what they'll give you. So you can go onto the website and have a look and see who's offering what. The idea is to make sure that first install goes really well. And then the clever thing is the government is paying grants for heat pumps, both in Scotland, England and Wales. So ultimately the cost of that installation is covered by the government. So for the scheme providers, it works out quite well as well.
So I'm going to bring you to Amrit. So if you watched last year, I had Nesta people on the panel last year because we did a large survey. I think it was the largest survey of heat pump installers that had ever been done in the country. And like I said before, trying to get engineers to do these surveys it was only about half an hour, I think, to fill in. But it's they're time poor. And so I had lots of prizes. I think we had about 40 prizes, and Wolseley put up the second prize. I think we had a Valent heat pump from Wolseley to. So we incentivised people to get involved in that survey. But I've hooked up with Amrit this year because this thing called AI, which I don't know a lot about, but this man does, we can do the survey even easier where people can just literally, once they've registered with Lorefully, they can literally just talk into this and then all in the background, all this wonderful stuff's going on. So just chat to us about that, Amrit.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. So as you said, it's really easy for people to interact. The idea is we really want to hear from people in the field doing work. Often, like the installer, as we said, is the key to making this transformation happen. But it can be so difficult to actually get the right information at the right time. So I've seen myself countless times where an installer is trying to install not just a heat pump, but a solar system and a battery and all of these bits of technology together, and is sat there on a piece of lawn furniture, downloading manuals on a phone, trying to find the right information. And that can be so frustrating. You know, what should be a morning's job ends up taking 2 days. And that sort of sense of frustration is so palpable when you talk to the installer. And so this sort of idea of like, how can we get the right information into the installer's hands while they're in the field? Because the requirements in the field are very different. Most AI tools at the moment are really focused on people who are sat in an office. They're doing coding work. They're doing sort of the normal types of work that you expect in a sort of office environment. They're not really designed for people who are in the field trying to do something physically with their hands, trying to get something to work. And so what we want to do is make that information easy to access. But we want to increase the collaboration between different installers, because there's a lot of knowledge that exists within community. There's a lot of knowledge there that can help each other. So if we can start capturing those experiences, we can bring them together, make it really easy for people to do that. And we're so grateful to the InstallerSHOW and for Nathan as well, because we partnered this year. We are the AI platform for the show. So it's super easy. If you've got your phone, if you just go to installershow.lorefully.com, spelled LOREFULLY.com, just register, as Nathan said, talk into your phone. It will pick up your sort of 30 seconds, your 2 seconds, whatever time you can spare, get that answer in, and we can collect those insights and make them available for the community. So because the more that the community can contribute, the stronger the information is. You know, it's that kind of knowledge which the super experienced installer who knows everything thinks is common knowledge, but the new people coming in, the young apprentices, they don't necessarily know that this is common. You know, it's that kind of advice where to fix this problem, hit it with a hammer over here, wiggle that wire over there. It's that kind of knowledge that we really want to try and capture and make available to the next generation of installers that are coming through. And, you know, we've got the generational divide as well, because the next generation of installer have grown up with social media. They've grown up with tech. And so for them, they need to actually engage with tech in a different way than, you know, having a binder worth of information or being sat in a room talked at for 5 days on a topic. They don't want that. They want to interact in a different way. They want to use the technology in a different way that makes their life easier. And so the world of work today is not set up for that. And so the more we can make it easier for the next generation, the faster we'll be able to hit our targets, get more tech deployed, and actually improve the rate at which heat pumps and other renewable tech can be installed and maintained properly.
So a bit like the Danfoss DeLorean car, we're going to dive back into the past again. So a good question I want to ask you, John, is so Wolseley are well known for, because you had a renewable centre, didn't you? And then that sort of closed, and then you've got the new. So was that because the market just hadn't quite established yet, and you're now seeing that it has, and that's why people have got the renewable centre they can go to now?
So back in the heady days of the early mid-2000s, which seems like 5 minutes ago to me, but anyway, we had renewables, or Plum Centre renewables. If you remember back with all the Green Deal and the tariffs and so on, there was huge demand and huge interest initially in solar, in home insulation, solar PV, as well as solar hot water heating, and then that all died out after a few years, and it all went fairly quiet, certainly in the merchant sector. What we've seen is that's really come back strongly in the last 2 or 3 years. Can I just say, I do totally agree with Mark. I think the installer is absolutely key to where we go here, absolutely. And in everything we try and do, it is to support that small installer. So everything we're doing now, in terms of gearing up, design, training, which is a big part, making training more accessible, so installers are not having to take extra time out from earning a living, which is really important. Making sure the supply chain's in place is to help the installer, because I do believe the demand is starting to grow now. There's still a long way to go. You know, I think we're really actively involved in training installers now. But let's be honest, there's a lot of installers that train that never actually install. So we've got to help them make that step as well. So I think it is the right time now. I think we've launched this brand because we see there's a big opportunity, and the supply chain is really important. But I will reiterate, for us, the local installer is the key to getting widespread adoption in the market.
Well, talking about installers, there's another founding member of the Guild of Master Heat Engineers just walked in with his long hair. He's one of my favourite engineers in the country.
Jesus.
Give us a wave, Damon. No, you're right, and you and I have had meetings before. We had one at Nesta, didn't we? Because one of the interesting things when I chat to sort of the third sector is, how do we get across, or how do we engage with the engineers? Because it is quite hard. But I've always said merchants are fascinating places because everyone has to go to a merchant at least once a week. I mean, I know we can order stuff online now, but you're going to that counter a lot as an engineer, and like John and I have talked about what we can actually do as a merchant to help the engineers and inspire them and bring them on board. Because if you know me well, I'm very critical of how we train people in this country, very critical, and I've got every right to be critical about it because I'm quite highly qualified in that area. But it's not working, and it's why things like peer-to-peer helps and mentorship, which we've obviously discussed, and it's actually what your little program is doing, is it? You've also got the other thing where you work with consumers. So you've got this where they can go and visit a heat pump, and that's helps. Tell us a little bit about what that's called.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a scheme called Visit a Heat Pump, and it kind of does what it says on the tin. It's aimed at consumers who want to see what a heat pump is like in a house that's like theirs before they make the decision about whether to go for one or not. And we were really surprised. We launched it just over a year ago. We weren't sure how many people with heat pumps would be willing to have people come round and look at it. We've actually been overwhelmed. We've got 900 hosts on the platform now. So these are people who have a heat pump and are willing to talk about it to people, to host events, to answer questions online as well. And we're seeing quite a lot of interest in going to see them as well. So we've had, I think, over 1,500 visits that have happened so far, and lots more interaction through the site where people aren't actually going to visit yet, but they're just asking people about their heat pump. And yeah, I mean, consumers have lots of questions. I mean, most people don't know a person with a heat pump, or it varies a lot depending on where you are in the country, but in some parts of the country, they're just not very common yet. So you haven't necessarily got a friend or relative to ask about this stuff. So going to see someone with a heat pump really helps. And what we've done over the last year is to make an installer side of that platform. So as an installer, you can sign up, and then you will get your sort of own page, and you can direct your customers to encourage them to sign up to be hosts. And then you can you display all your installations that are on that platform in one place, so you can send that link off to prospective customers. The thing that I noticed, I mean, when I say this to installers, they all say, oh yeah, obviously. But when we talked to people who went to visit, they often told us they were interested, but they had to persuade their other half. And this was the opportunity to show that, to their girlfriend or their boyfriend or whatever, and sort of say, look, they're not that noisy. This is where you're going to put the tank. Just go over those sorts of questions that people have if they're not, just to get them over the line. So.
Because coming back to your point about how important engineers are, you're the ones that interface with these consumers, aren't you? The homeowners or who? And I don't think people that's a hard thing to do, is it? We meet a very diverse range of customers, don't we? It's hard, isn't it?
I mean, you've got some customers who are incredibly clued up, and they do know the ins and outs of everything, which is great. And then you've also got the other end of it where they don't know anything, which is also equally as good. But it goes back to what we were saying before, like the whole industry is geared up in a way to not help small businesses. So installers who are out there doing it on their own, it's not helping them to grow their businesses or to be business people. Because when you go and do an apprenticeship, no one teaches you about tax, VAT, profit and loss, profit margin and all the rest of it. They don't teach you how to interact with customers, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with a confrontation or an argument or anything like that. So there's lots just outside of installing a heat pump or a boiler or oil heating. We can do so much more in terms of the whole industry, in terms of how we can run our businesses and help people to run their businesses. Because if we can do that, then we can get more people into the industry, because it comes a lot more attractive to people to get into it. And if you can see small business owners, doing very well, growing their businesses, money into the economy, which is what we need and want, then more people are going to be attracted into it, which will then attract younger people to come into it, because they can see why that person's doing it, because they're earning. I got into the industry because the most people in the pub who had the most money were the plumbers. So I got into it through that. Whereas now, who is gearing the people now to get into it? And we've got to do it another way, where we make the industry sexy in a way, I suppose, And that's by giving the power to the engineers and to the business owners to drive it forward, because we're not going to change where we are now unless something does change.
And I know there's something else quite close to your heart as well. So when I started in industry in 86, 87, falling from height was the leading cause of death in our industry. It's not. It's now suicide, and it's 2 a day now.
It's ridiculous, the numbers.
And
Males,
you and I, we chat to people that we kind of think are getting a bit stressed. We're just there to chat to them, aren't we?
I mean, just in the industry alone, in construction, the biggest suicide is males in this country. And then when you drive that down, it's from construction industry. And then from that, it's small business owners, not understanding how they're making money. Are they in profit? Are they, jobs overwhelming them, etc., etc. That stress to provide for your family. And as men, we don't talk about it. We just bottle it up and then hopefully not do what the end result could be. But that's where it leads to. So it's that whole awareness of the whole piece is going to help us no end,
Bit of a curveball in Amrit. I mean, we're talking about all this new technology called AI. Can that help with something as fundamental and behavioural as that? To relieve stress in the industry and help people become better business owners. Is that something?
Yeah, absolutely, Nathan. I mean, I think the tech can help in a lot of ways. Just by being there and sort of being trained on the right materials, it can give an avenue for people to ask questions which they may not be able to ask anywhere else, especially if it's sort of outside of hours. Because again, installers are so busy doing the install jobs day to day, they don't necessarily have time during the working hours to do to assess their business, to take time out to actually work on their business, and that's usually done outside of hours, which is also typically when advisors and other people are not necessarily available. So absolutely, tech can have a part to play in this. But I think one thing which you said absolutely resonates, which is at the end of the day, this is about people. Tech can only help the people be the best that they can be. It can't replace the people. We're not at a place yet where robotics are sophisticated enough to do installs by themselves. It's just not. It's going to be a long time before that happens. And so the more we can help people address the challenges they're facing, the better. Especially in the context of like business and how to interact with people. I had a phrase recently which I really like, which is there are 2 types of problems in business. There are people-related problems, and there are problems which you don't yet realize are people-related problems. And I think that it's absolutely true. Like the more we can sort of help, we give installers a lot of support and engineers a lot of support with the technical. But that sort of people element of it, if we can help them with that as well, then it can make a huge difference to their well-being and the quality of the business they're able to generate as well.
But that's where that comes in though, Nate, with the time piece. If you can use this technology in the right way to help someone understand profit and loss, VAT, how to quote and price a job correctly, it can free up their time elsewhere to then go and do the training, or to take on an apprentice, or to train another individual to do it. I mean, the government don't help in any way. It costs you a fortune to have an apprentice. They want to train the next wave of people into this industry, but they want to take all the money out your till. So there has to be something that can help that whole piece as well. So, if we're going to train people and train ourselves, we have to have time back. And if you're running a business, how can technology, AI, peer-to-peer, all help that to provide the individual owner to have that time back to invest in their business and someone else, because there's only a finite amount of hours in the day.
We also see quite a lot of potential for tech to help with those issues. So we also have tried the use of AI. We piloted a chatbot with a company that we work with called Renewables, who's developing tools for installers. And that was really about trying to see if we could help people answer the questions they have on the job a bit more quickly. And like Amrit said, one of the side benefits was for people who were newer to the industry, kind of gave them a safe space to ask questions where they knew they weren't going to show themselves up for a lack of knowledge, which I think was quite helpful for some of those people just coming in, like, don't have to feel embarrassed because it's just an AI. And then where that code is available for people to build on, anyone who is techie can use it. Where we think we could go next with that sort of thing is to help with some of just the mundane daily stuff that takes up a lot of time but isn't really what installer wants to spend their time doing, like form filling. AI can start doing that sort of thing. We're going to be looking at whether we can build tools that help, it's like help use AI to take out some of the burden of daily work.
I mean, even if you look at how, this is how you could go with it. You've got Wolseley, who you have an account with. let's have an account with them. That's all your prices. You've got them there. If you're fitting a Valent Aerotherm 7, because it's there are other brands available, but it's right in front of me. If you've got that sitting there, you're going to order the same amount of kit, day after day, time after time. So there's no reason why AI can't help the engineer and say, right, you've done this job 7 times before, this is all the kit you ordered, that's the cost of it. Right, there's your kit list, send it to Wolseley, Wolseley send it to the client, so it's all delivered for there. AI can interact with all of that and make that so much easier. At the moment, it's so laborious and so, archaic in how we order kit. I know it's coming and it probably will, but it needs to be quicker. And the tools need to be better to help the installer or engineer to be able to do it.
What made you, so when people ask me, well, a lot of people ask me, Nathan, who's a good engineer to put my heat pump in? So the owner of this show asked me that, and Dan put it in, who's over there, and a former energy secretary and the Lord Mayor of London. But when people ask me about, well, who's a good engineer and who's good in business, there's 3 people that come to mind. That's you, Barry Sharp, and Steve Webster. But what made you good at business and an engineer? Because it isn't, including me, most engineers are crap at business. What made you get good, and is there any tips for others? Because we are quite an entrepreneurial industry.
I mean, I came in a different way, so I wasn't with the one-man band. I done my apprenticeship, and we were the last apprentices through the 4-year at British Gas, where it was the proper apprenticeship into service and repair and whatnot. And I was lucky enough to then put into the commercial element of British Gas, and I ran teams. We had to run a profit and loss statement. I then got asked to go and work for Tesco and was a refrigeration manager there. So again, you had to look after an area. It's profit and loss. We had to run as a profitable business. And I've done a degree through the Open University whilst I was employed in the commercial sector. So I then thought, well, there's a market. I've got the knowledge. I'll go and do it myself. And then COVID hit. It was a really good time to get out of it. So I came into it then. So I've been on my own now for about 4 years. And now I'm with Liam and we're doing our bit. But for someone who just went with one-man band to another one-man band and went through the apprenticeship that route, they've never been taught anything to do with business. All their business has been taught by is a person they learned from who probably done it on a spreadsheet or a packet of fags on the back of it. And it was that. And it was a phone call whilst trying to solder a bit of pipe, whilst shouting to the apprentice, take down these notes, because I've got to call them back this evening, which could end up being next week. So it was a different way into it.
I've just seen Snippif turn up, the CEO of Snippif and the president, who Nesta have been working with this project. Just this project, Madeleine, you were saying it's now going to go to, it's scaling up. So how does it get funded? Who's funding it? Because obviously we're talking about free heat pumps to engineers, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I sort of hinted at this before, but there are government grants, as I'm sure many people here, if not everyone knows, for heat pumps in England and Wales, and a separate grant in Scotland. But it's normally £7,500 for a consumer who's installing a heat pump. And what we found through the pilot is that will cover the cost of kit for most installations. Occasionally you have to spend a bit more, but normally that is what you'd have to pay for the kit, and everything else would be labour. So for people installing their first heat pump, that grant can cover the cost. The issue is just you don't want an installer to have to lay out for it up front and then wait for the money to come back. So what the schemes are doing is making sure that they're ordering the kit, sending it to installers, so there's no outlay for an installer in doing it, and then the money will come back through the grant. In addition, schemes are providing services, which I think, as businesses, they're looking at how they develop their networks with installers, how they build brand loyalty, how they get more installers into the industry. So there's something in it for those scheme providers, so that they're putting in some resource as well. But yeah, it doesn't, I guess we're lucky that the grant is there, but we can make use of that to make sure that installers can get a free heat pump.
John, I want to come to you. You know the boiler world inside out. Are you seeing big changes within the sort of the well-known manufacturers? I mean, obviously we know they make heat pumps, or they're working with OEMs that make. Are you seeing some sort of changes that have interested you over the last couple of years?
Before I do that, can I just, Mark mentioned male suicide and how prevalent it is in the industry. A shout out to a charity called Andy's Man Club. If anybody's not aware of it, please have a look, because they're doing great work supporting males in the construction sector, and I think it's really important. So in terms of the boiler market, I think not a huge change in the traditional boiler market. I think we're at that stage where, who knows? People talk about 2035. Will it be pushed back? We don't know. What I think we are seeing is a rush for boiler manufacturers to get a presence in the air source heat pump market. I think that's challenging because there's a lot more players now. One of the things I've noticed walking around here today is there are a lot of Chinese brands coming as well. So that market's about to become really, really competitive. That will create challenges for the existing boiler manufacturers because the volumes that they've been able to rely on maybe won't be there in the future. Having said that, they do have an advantage in that their service and support is generally way above the AC players and the new air source heat pump entrants. And if I was one of my suppliers, if I was to recommend to them, I think play on service and play on maintenance after the installation, because that's what the consumer, I think, needs reassurance on and is looking for.
Getting that backup service, are we seeing changes in that, Mark? I mean, are some better than others, or some sort of...
It's a wild west at the moment in that department. You've got, I mean, it's tough in terms of heat pumps where you sit, because you have a hermetically sealed unit or a split that's refrigerant that's going to need an F-gas engineer to do the fridge side. Not necessarily all of it, but the fridge side. You get a fridge engineer in who may not understand hydronics, so you've got to disconnect there. So as a consumer, it's who do I get in to repair my heat pump or service it? Now, anyone could service it, not a problem there, because you don't have to break into the fridge side of it. You shouldn't be breaking into the fridge side of it on a general service, only if you've got a breakdown or you think there's an issue. So anyone can service a unit, which is fine, but it's the actual knowledge and aftercare of doing a fault finding on a heat pump and repairing it, and the cost of doing that. So for a general heating engineer who's a bit unsure, may have got his F-gas qualifications and can do it but hasn't got that reassurance, they can find themselves very quickly in a world of debt by not understanding how much a compressor change could cost in terms of oxygen-free nitrogen, refrigerant, scales, a compressor, gauges. You know, the list of kit goes on. You know, you get your F-gas qualification and then you go and weigh out $5,000 on kit. So there is a whole piece where the manufacturers need to ensure that the training and the warranties that they're providing hold up, because that's how the consumer is going to get their confidence in it, that Valent and Grant and Stiebel and Mitsubishi and all the rest of it are going to send an engineer, and timely, to repair that job within that warranty period and not void it. And not turn up and go, oh, you haven't fitted an antifreeze valve that's not required in any shape or form, but you haven't fitted it so the warranty's void. Or this system hasn't got glycol in, which unless you live in the outer Hebrides, you ain't going to need. So there's lots of bits still to come in there that I think the manufacturers really need to ensure that they're nailing and providing that confidence to the engineers. Because I think the manufacturer who does the best aftercare is the one that's going to get it. And in this country at the moment, there's a couple, and that's it. Yeah. I won't name any brands, but I'll get pelted from around me.
I really want to name, but I'm not going to. And I think that's quite a shape-shifting landscape in its own right, is it? Because what we do tend to see is a massive movement in that sector. So, like, one minute I know someone working for one company who's a great technical support, and then the next minute they're with someone else. And then a year later they're with someone else. I mean, that's always been a shift in industry, hasn't it, John? But it does seem to have changed quite a lot again.
But to Mark's point, I think one of the key issues is your gas boiler breaks down, you can get a spare same day pretty much anywhere in the UK. We've all seen horror stories on social media, people waiting 2 months for a spare part for a heat pump. And I think spares, warranty, ongoing maintenance, if we're going to get consumers to trust in this and invest serious money, that's going to be the key. So I agree, it's all down to quality, really.
And that's somewhere where tech can help as well. I mean, we've seen with some heat pump manufacturers are starting to use AI and machine learning to basically spot faults before they get bad, and to learn about what's driving those, so they can improve that in other models, and we need more of that, I think.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well. There's a particular use case for OEMs and manufacturers who want to better support the community by making the materials easier to search through and make it so that they can sort of capture some of that feedback as well. So we're doing that directly with a couple of different manufacturers as well. So definitely seeing that coming through in order to make it easier for people on installations to find that piece of critical information, or perhaps to feedback that this isn't here and I need this here, so that the next iteration of materials can be updated with that relevant information.
But even just on the material front is one thing. We haven't learned that from AC. I mean, climate has probably been one. Climate, Dean and Wood, HRP are probably the only ones, and they're not everywhere, so they can't get that. But I think there is only, unless you can tell me otherwise, Nathan, I think there is only one manufacturer of heat pumps that provides a hands-on training, which is ideal, where you can strip out a compressor, put it back in, and all the rest of it. I think they are unless you know otherwise, they are the only manufacturer in the country offering that training to engineers. None, there's no others. So how are you going to do a massive rollout into the future when only one manufacturer is showing their potential engineers on how to repair that unit?
Well, we'll roll out, but then we'll get loads of consumer complaints.
Yeah.
That will be the answer.
And we are seeing consumers getting more worried or concerned about who's going to look after this heat pump. And as you say, sometimes there's horror stories. We had Emma Bowen from IMS talking just now on our stall about servicing, and seeing as a kind of a growth area for installers, because there are more opportunities now. There's more heat pumps, and it's going to grow in future. But also pointing out that it'd be really helpful if manufacturers brought some standardization to the service schedules. So as you say, you're not doing things you might not need to on one model versus another.
I mean, look, it's tough. If you're going to go and train, you've got to take time off work to go and train. No one's funding that. No one's paying for that. So we have a $7,500 grant to help a client get a heat pump installed. But why aren't we giving a $2,500 grant to an engineer to go and train and go and learn how to install a heat pump and repair it and maintain it? You know, to take 2 weeks off work, you know, the prices will vary up and down the country, but let's take it as a minimum, £200 a day. That's $2,000. You know, if I ring my mortgage company and go to them, sorry, I'm going to go learn how to do a heat pump. Do you mind if I, this month free? That it ain't going to wash. So there has to be an element where we look at it from an holistic point of view and go, actually, we've got a problem here. What can we do? Let's invest in people and enable them to go and do this training. You know, it's quite happy we could give people tax breaks on their corporation tax to be able to go and train people. There's loads of stuff the government could do, but they don't. We could go down a rabbit hole on that one. I know that for a fact. But
We shouldn't do politics.
no, we should stay away from it. Yeah, heat pumps and politics, stay away. But there has to be something in there where the power is back to the engineers and the small businesses to train these guys and do it. You know, Octopus can take their lads off the street. British Gas can take them off. Aera can take them off. You know, these people can do it. But, in my opinion, they're not the ones who drive this forward.
I think to your point, the average age of a gas-safe engineer allegedly is about 55. Yeah. There's a reason for that, because a lot of them were trained by British Gas, as you were. Yeah. That doesn't exist anymore, so somehow we have to fill that void. And I think manufacturers, merchants, industry bodies, there's a role for all of us to play in that, but ultimately it requires money.
It does all come back to money, and it shouldn't, but in the day where we are now, the installers, if they've got a choice between fitting a combi for a day at X price or taking 2 weeks off to go and understand the bare minimum of a heat pump install, they're going to choose that every day because that's where they can make their money. They've got to feed their families, or they've got to pay for their staff and apprentices and all the rest of it. So everything is always geared to the client, the end client. Gear it the other way. Put it to the installers.
Or do both.
Well, you can. The money's there. Of course it's there. It can be both. It just needs someone thinking outside the box and being able to do it. Because if you get that, you get more people into the industry, and then there's going to be work there. I mean, don't come where we work, because we want to work. But you know, if everyone comes into it, the whole industry can change, and it becomes a lot more attractive. Because a healthy industry is an attractive industry. which that will bring more people into it.
I think these are the kinds of insights which we want to capture from installers, because part of the work we're doing with Nathan is that advocacy piece, right? The third sector, as Nathan said, and sort of helping to inform policy. I mean, Nathan, you're in a great position where you've got politicians coming to you, you've got people coming to you asking, what do installers think? And so if we can capture this at scale from installers across the industry, then we can better inform the policymakers that this is actually what's needed. It's not just about the end consumer, it's about providing money for training, it's about making the system work across all fronts.
It's interesting what you said about funding this sort of training. I mean, we've all grown up with manufacturers, and some of us know the marketing budgets for some manufacturers. I mean, we're kind of at an event here where there's some marketing budgets being thrown. I've always wondered why a manufacturer hasn't sort of said to themselves, right, let's really invest. Let's say do a 2-week boot camp thing, and let's think, right, we won't do one show this year or 2 years if it's ish. Put all that money, because they'll become very popular, especially if they do, because you're doing something really good for the engineers, aren't you? I often wonder about them. I think that might change in the future, marketing, because
that may change because of the technology change. Because let's be honest, the combi, you put it on the wall, it just works, doesn't it? It's took the skill out of design.
But marketing on its own, how much money have people paid in marketing to market a heat pump on the television of late? You know, you see it on Coronation Street, there's been a Valent heat pump will turn up, or in a bus show or something, you know, a poster there. Take all that money and train the engineers, because the engineers are in people's houses. That's your marketing. So you get them people to helpfully promote renewables, solar, air conditioning, mechanical ventilation, heat recovery, the whole lot. That's your marketing budget. It's right there. And then empower the engineer to grow their business, because there is more work than we have engineers. Even if I took on 100 engineers tomorrow, if we had the adoption that gas boilers has got, we wouldn't cope, because you've also got to service, maintain and repair all that kit as well. It isn't there. So we're funneling money into areas where it's not needed.
You mentioned some big installation companies. I'm just checking my time because other speakers on. You've mentioned some big companies. I know the big companies quite well that you mentioned, and there's some lovely people there. But and they're getting the right word out. You know, they're helping with the message, aren't they? But have they affected you as an SME? I mean, I hear from a lot of engineers I hear from a lot of engineers they're not affecting them and their business, and some people are being affected.
No, I mean, look at the whole range of it. You know, if you look, British Gas never affected the local one-man band service and repair.
It's because they were always too expensive.
Well, that's true, yeah. So there's always going to be a range, you know. I'll get told off, but everyone wants to pay Primark and they want to pay Armani. So depending on what level of install you want, or what type of house you've got, or how technical you want to be, the client will either just want, I want a heat pump at a budget install, or I want to repipe the whole house, have all my radiators done, I want fan convectors, I want Jager radiator. You know, there's lots of things that's in a range of a heat pump. You know, you can do as little or as much as you want. So there's a market for everyone in it. You know, there's also house sizes that go from 1-bed flats, which should be air conditioning probably, all the way up to mansions. So there is a room for everyone in this market.
I absolutely agree. Very rare a market gets dominated by 1 or 2 players. And the one thing that the local installer will always win on, in my opinion, is service and responsiveness. And that's what I think householders value, because when your heating goes, you just want it fixed.
Well, I'd like to thank all my guests. They've been wonderful, haven't they? And you've been wonderful as well. Thank you very much.